Hello everyone, welcome back. After last week's stream, I got bit by the GitHub Actions automation bug. And so, I'll get to it in just a second, just to be so I spent a great deal of time last week automating the material design in XAML project. So I wanted to show a bit of what came from that, and I think it's actually ready to use to kick full release. So I finished it at like, I don't know, 1 or 2 a.m. and went, yeah, I probably shouldn't try to run a real release at 1 or 2 a.m. when I'm only half awake. So I figured I'd do it now when I'm at least conscious, have Mountain Dew, and people to laugh at me when it goes wrong. So I figured we would do that. But first, let's take a quick little peek-see at that brain teaser. So this one actually came to me from a colleague earlier today. This isn't the exact setup that they had, but it mirrors that exact case. And everybody's on point, even without a hint of what exception is thrown. So, the solution, as people have pointed out, I threw this one in here just to make sure that, or I should say, this one down here, just to make sure that anybody watching the live unit testing couldn't, glean the exception from which lines were executed or not. But yes, empty list is the case with a divide by zero exception with the modulus count. So the code that my colleague had was somewhat similar to this. And there's actually a fairly clever trick. I think his code actually involves something more like this, where it was something more akin to if list is L. I'm just gonna comment this down because it got down to something like this, and there's actually a clever solution if you get down to something that's either a list or similar, because this is for people who haven't seen it, the double curly brace is a C# property pattern match expression, but it's an empty set of properties, so it matches any non-null value. So it is often used as a null check and as a way to allocate a local variable. But in this case, a very simple check inside of here is you can do something like count greater than 0. And then this test here should immediately start failing, because now the divide by 0 should actually be a assert null, which we can change up real quick. Assert null. Let's see. Get next item. Items 0. So you can change up the code a little bit like that, and now it should all pass. Huzzah, everyone's happy. We should probably actually have a test that now lands inside of this if condition to prove that it works. But with property pattern matching, especially if you have like a string, oftentimes this can be an easy way of doing a string is null or empty check. It's not the same as is null or white space, because you obviously would need to check the contents there, but something like this can be quite convenient. So, huzzah. And points awarded to both people guessing right out the gate. So, well done. Okay, so a simple task for those who watch your streams. One can hope, but I always like oftentimes my brain teasers will come out of questions that I get asked from people, and sometimes they're simple, and oftentimes they come in the context of a much bigger project. And so it's sometimes difficult to distill down the complexity down into something smaller that's easily shareable, because obviously sometimes in bigger projects things get lost in the mess. There's lots of layers of indirection, things get confused. Okay, so I built some stuff, a lot of stuff. So I did some GitHub Action stuff. So this generate milestone contributors, I did a stream on this a while back, and we referenced this last time. This was just a simple action that generates a list of contributors. And what I was really looking for was something to completely automate my release process. So I'm going to show this, and then I think we're actually going to run it. And I'm trying to remember why this thing failed out. Hopefully we're in a running state. If not, we may be building this. So this little guy here does a lot. And let's actually open him up. So for those people not familiar with it, the period key at the root of your repo on GitHub will take you into what I call web VS Code version, which is absolutely awesome, especially for editing things like this. The other thing you can do is you can just change github.com to github.dev and boop, you're in. Okay, so what branch are we on? Master, let's just make sure everything stayed synced because it does hold my stuff. And then this guy. So this little action is, and I'm just gonna scroll, the scroll bar's a little, so it kind of big, but it has a bunch of steps. And the key things that I wanted this thing to do for me is generate a release, compile and build out all the artifacts. So the demo app, all the NuGet packages, etc. Add the release notes to the release for me, because we've done some configuration with this release.yaml to where typically I can just use the auto-gen releases at that point. I try to be diligent about using labels on the PRs that go into a milestone so that they appropriately generate release notes for me. So when I tag things up as release notes, it's there just so that I can click the auto-generate release notes button. But now I don't even need to click the button. It's that cool. So create a GitHub release with the release notes, all the artifacts attached. I wanted it to use my custom generate contributors task that we built out because I wanted this to use my list of contributors that I like. The built-in stuff doesn't account for people who just comment on PRs and issues, and my opinion is that those comments count as contributions. Obviously, there's spam and whatnot, but that's usually less of an issue. Most of the time, it's people actually providing useful feedback, and I feel like people who are willing to provide useful feedback, that counts. People who take the time to write up a good enough issue that it gets fixed and merged, that counts. So I have my own little list of contributors that I build out, and then this thing also filters out things like my bots and me and things like that, because it seems weird to congratulate myself. So build out the release. I also got I went full on crazy. I went full on crazy because inside of the wiki, we have this pack icon changes, because I don't want to deal with the pack icons and semantic versioning, because there are constantly changes to the pack icons, and because we gen them from the materialdesignicons.net. There's a nightly action that we'll look at here in a little bit that does all of that. My solution is to say, you know what? I'm not going to consider the pack icon enum when determining semantic versioning, because frankly, that would mean that every version would be an auto rev every time. So I was like, nah. The compromise though is I'll document the changes, because I know which icons are added. I know which icons are modified. I know which icons are removed. And so I can at least give a documentation thing. And by putting them all in one page like this, it means I can do things like Control F and just search, which is kind of convenient. But I wanted my pipeline to gen this up for me. I had a little CLI that I was using locally to do all the work. That was too much work. And we ended up spending a decent amount of time last week futzing with it. And I realized like 2 days later that there was an even simpler solution than what we came up with. So I wanted it to gen those release notes. I wanted it to update the wiki page. And more importantly, before it pushed everything to production and live, I wanted it to pause so I could review it. That was the sum of what I wanted. And I think I got my wish list. Okay, so let's start with this. So we're gonna start with the release, because we're gonna kick this thing off, and while it's running, I'll go talk through what it's actually doing. So the sum total of work that it takes for me to do a release should be about 5 or 6 clicks, depending on how efficient I want to be. So step 1, give it a milestone, click the go button. Okay, that's step 1. Now this guy should fire off in just a moment. Okay, now if all goes well, this is going to be the actual 4.7 release. Maybe we'll get real fancy and I'll wire this thing up to Twitter or something. But 4.7 release going. So first thing it ends up doing is this set version number. So let's take a look at how all of this is going, because this gets used or this gets built up in a lot of different cases. So you'll note this get version, I'm using a reusable workflow. We used to be using composite actions. The thing I don't like about composite actions is it bundles a bunch of steps into a single step, and can be really messy if you've got lots of output. I like the breaking of it apart. That's really just a GitHub UI issue. But if we go here and we look at get versions, this guy comes in here. This is probably one of the most complicated ways I could have come up with for setting version numbers. But we have 3 NuGets that we publish: the material design, the colors, and then the Ma Apps integration package. All of these things get versioned independently, but generally when we talk about version, it's always of the main package. Generally, the other ones are just minor version bumps. I thought about collapsing these two together at some point. We'll see, getting out of there. But the big idea here is this job sets up these versions. And what I was looking for is a single place where I could have all of my versions set once, and then all of my workflows could reference this reusable workflow. So this guy comes in here, and the key part is it has this input Boolean of is full release. So if this gets to set to true, it'll end up skipping this step and just literally echoing these version numbers out. So all of this work to literally echo out these exact strings into these outputs. The only difference being is that in the case where this is false, it'll fall into this case where it'll tack on -ci and do the preview versioning stuff, which is kind of what I wanted. Right? I wanted to get down to the point where I could leverage this. So good, great. That makes me happy. Everyone's happy. I'm happy. Maybe not everybody. Okay, let's see where we're at. Next one, generate release notes. This one took me some thinking of how to deal with this. Let's see, get version. Where's generate release notes? Create release. Get version. Update wiki. Did I put it at the bottom? That might have been dumb. Collect contributors. Oh, collect contributors is generate release notes. That's a little weird. Okay, so what this guy ends up doing is you can actually, the same API that GitHub uses when you click the button to generate release notes, you can actually just invoke it on the CLI and get it right back to you. So this line here, so this one calls that original custom action that we wrote that gets my list of contributors, which just has my pre-canned strings, which is great. This guy here uses the GitHub CLI to call GitHub API, generate release notes, passing in a particular tag and all of that, which is great. It's what we wanted. It gens up the release notes, pulls it out of a JSON body, does some concatenation into this release notes markdown file, and then uploads that markdown file for use later. Okay, so that's collect contributors, get version, build artifacts. This is where all the meat and potatoes happens in terms of actually like making the app compile and all that. This, there's not a lot new in. This runs the build, this runs the tests, this uploads the XAML test screenshots if there are any. This builds the NuGet packages, this uploads the NuGet packages, this uploads the demo app. I realized that it probably should upload, we have more than one demo app. And so I'm thinking I may add an additional step here as well, just so that we can get some more artifacts. But regardless, or maybe put them all in the same zip. I don't know. One way or another, this is where all of the meat and potatoes of actually doing the work happens. So not a lot new from what was there before, but it's now all consolidated in a nice reusable workflow. And the reason for that is this nightly release one, I wanted to be able to leverage that again for being able to have my nightly release kick off. But we'll come back to the night release in a minute because it's actually broken and I want to fix it. Okay, and then the next one is the build icon changes. So this is the stuff that used to live in my old CLI. I migrated some of the code into the MD resource gen where it would do the icon diff, and just built it so that this guy here outputs an icon changes.md. The key thing that I noticed from last week is I was fighting about how do I get the right versions. My old stuff is like downloading NuGet packages and using reflection. And I realized at this point here, where I am wanting to run this tool, I actually know what my prior release was. So I can actually use the GitHub CLI to say, what was my last release? And then from there, I can say, hey, by the way, for that release, let's go and just download its NuGet package. Problem solved. And then I can take this guy and say, well, I've got my current NuGet package because it was previously built as an artifact. I've got my previous release's NuGet package because it was an artifact. Now let's just run the diff. I don't have to download from NuGet.org. I can just pull it straight from GitHub because I've got all of those things added on there. So it means that I have to make sure that those NuGet packages are always added to my releases, but this pipeline is doing that for me. So problem solved. I shouldn't say pipeline. Workflow. GitHub Actions workflow. Yeah, terminology. Pipeline is just so much shorter. Less syllables. Mwah. Okay, anyway, so this guy builds up the icon changes, creates this icon changes MD file, and once again uploads it to the run. So if we go back here, at this point, this guy's building. If we look at the summary, oh, he's not going to show it yet because he hasn't gotten there. So we will start to get artifacts tacked onto this guy once he actually builds and tests. So he's gonna take a minute because he's got to go and do some stuff. So yeah, he's passing tests. Huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. Okay. So we're gonna come down one more step. So the next thing it does before it actually pauses is it does this create release. So once again, the magical thing is the GitHub CLI, and I'm going to call this out. It's documented, but if you want to run the GitHub CLI inside of your action, oftentimes you'll need to do this. There's lots of other directions about how to authenticate and yada, 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 yada. If you're inside of a GitHub action, this is probably, in my opinion, the easiest way to auth. Is I've already got a token. Just use that token, pretty please. So setting it at the top level environment variable means all the jobs get this environment variable and it propagates down and everyone's happy. So create release. So all this does is it downloads the artifacts that were previously uploaded as part of this run. So it goes after the NuGet artifacts, the demo app artifacts, the release note artifacts, the demo app. So there's a fun thing that happens is when you upload an artifact to GitHub, it will, and then download it from the web browser, it'll do the nice zipping up for you. But if you just use the download artifact task, it doesn't do the zipping. So it'll conveniently, it's like you sent up a folder, I download a folder. I'm going to give you back what you sent in. It's like, okay, fine, I get it. I'm like, but that's yucky. So I zip it up. So I download it and then I zip it up because I prefer to have a zip attached to my release rather than a directory thing. So I'm like, you know what? We're going to zip it. So to mirror what was happening before, I just did that, which I thought was even easier. And then it downloads the release notes. And the whole reason for building up that release notes MD file earlier in the, well, really should probably rename this job. But the whole point of doing that is so that when we do the GitHub release create, because you'll know this is being created as a draft release, set as latest, set as titles, is then we can do things like notes file release notes MD, which is pretty clever. There is one of the things that I spun my wheels on for way too bloody long is when you are uploading, that was weird. When you are uploading files using the GitHub CLI on PowerShell, this is a PowerShell thing, their docs show that you can use wildcard characters. I couldn't get the wildcard characters to work at all. I don't understand. The docs seem to indicate, and there was an issue that I found logged here about how, well, under certain terminals, this wildcard will get automatically expanded for you. I don't know how that happens. I wasn't aware that that would happen on any terminals, but the docs claimed it, and I was in PowerShell, so I was like, I don't care. I just want it to work. But that linked GitHub issue does show that The solution is to just use get item with the wildcard globbing pattern. That'll expand it out, and then you'll end up with the list of files that you can then feed in, and then we also tack on the demo app zip that we built a second ago. So this gets the release created, and then this is the point where it stops and pauses and waits, because at this point it hasn't done anything public. And for everybody who is on this release, I apologize. You probably got emailed like a dozen times this last week where I was testing this thing and you're like, oh, I got tagged in a release and oh, the release has been deleted. Yeah, that was me testing, and I'm sorry. I did it like a dozen times. I tried to limit how many times I did it, and a couple times I went through and deleted off all of the tags from the notes, and it at some point I got bored doing that. Okay. So this guy is going. Okay, so that's still going. Okay, so it's built the artifacts. Huzzah. It's going to get the icon changes. It's going to create the draft release. So it's done all of the hard stuff so far. Now, the thing that makes it actually pause. So inside of GitHub Actions, you have this thing called environments. And I went through and I made this production environment. It could be named whatever I wanted. I couldn't decide what to name it. And so late night, highly caffeinated Kevin came up with the name production and went, good enough. But key thing here, required reviewer, me. I thought about adding other stuff and I'm like, nah, right now, me. That sounds great. Anyone else who should be able to approve it has admin rights on the repo and can add themselves to the list. So, but you'll note it requires you to be on the master branch, and it requires an approval or a reviewer to actually sign off on this before it's allowed to go. And you could also lock down like NuGet secrets and whatnot to just this environment so that other things did happen. I'm like, whatever. I don't care. The whole point of creating this environment was to put this approver gate on it so that it would stop my process and say, no, I'm gonna wait for Kevin to actually approve it before it goes. So the key thing for that is if we come down, because if we look here, that's not it. Push NuGets and update wiki are the two things that follow create draft release. Right? So let's look at those two. So update wiki, this little line right here. So the fact that this environment references production says, hey, by the way, in order to actually run this job, you need to actually get or pass the checks to get into the production environment. I have to click the button, which is perfect. Because it's after the create release where it's going to create the draft release, I get the opportunity to go in, review the release notes. If there's anything I want to change, move stuff around, I can check the icon diff that it's going to upload, make sure everything looks right, all that stuff. Perfect, right? I can do whatever amount of checking I want. At some point, I may just say, send it. But this is I want to build up some confidence in this process before I, full send. This one here surprised me that it was this easy. Because the wiki on the repo is itself a Git repo, it turns out that when you want to clone it, it's about this hard. And I went, oh, that's kind of cool. And because we're going to collapse this for a minute. And because I have the wiki open where anyone can push to it, which some people are like, oh, that's terrifying. I'm like, honestly, it's rare that I have to make too many fixes to what people do on the wiki. So if you see a bug on the wiki or a typo or whatever, fix it, right? As long as people are fixing things in good faith, I've had very little issue. There's occasionally times where I've seen people make some either major blunders or whatnot, but it's a Git repo. I can revert. I can force push over the top. I have a local copy. I'm not real concerned. So it sets up a config, does the thing, and then just straight pushes. Now, this is where things got a little gnarly. So you'll note it downloads that icon diff markdown file. And then it does a bunch of PowerShell. This looks complicated. It's not as complicated as it looks. I ended up just cloning the repo locally, writing a script, running through it. Wasn't too hard. This is basically relying on regex being able to parse the wiki. And for now, I was like, that's probably good enough. Yes, formatting and whatnot could break it later. not that big of a deal. The first one just goes through and parses out. Oh, where is it? Let's just go look. So what we're looking to do is figure out this page here, which you'll note is underneath wiki 4x icon changes. Technically .md is what it is in the repo. And then this is just a header. So it has to use the previous version and the next version, and then either create this icon changes file, because I know 5x is coming really soon, so I wanted it to handle the creation of the new file, so I did test it on the 5x stuff. So that should just work. Crossing fingers. Hopefully it does when we get there. Or update an existing one. But the idea here is that this is going to go through and do that 4x icon changes, 5x icon changes, etc. Because all it's doing is parsing out these versions, splitting, grabbing all of that stuff, and then either creating a new empty file or appending its current contents to the existing file. That's all this whole thing is just append myself to a file, and if the file doesn't exist, make a new one. And then finally, adding the link to the file, because in the wiki, we don't expose all of those other files directly. Like you can always, where is the thing? Pages, yeah. So you can see the 4x icon changes. You can always get to it this way if you want. But typically, I think people probably go from the sidebar, probably find pack icon changes, and then we just add another line to this list. So once again, all this thing does is regex its way to victory, goes hunting for that little guy, and says, okay, where are you in the file? Okay, I'm going to insert myself into this, and away we go. And then it whacks the local file that it downloaded, and everyone's happy. Write some warnings, but then push the NuGet update. So this is all just manipulating the wiki. And then we get to the interesting stuff. Push NuGets. Sends it out to NuGet.org. Nothing fancy here, right? This is just another step. I only put it in its own job so that it can run in parallel. And then the last step, normally I would have done all of the 3 of these steps in parallel. Except for I have seen way too many times where I publish the release and people go, I don't see it on NuGet yet. It's like, calm down. It's going. Be patient. It's running. So I put this one at the end for no other reason other than to mitigate the pings that I will get in the last 5 minutes right after doing it. Okay, so here we are. We've gotten this far. It's done all of the stuff. Okay, so step 1, let's go validate the release. We come in here, and not everybody will be able to see this. You have to have, I think, contributor access on the repo to see draft releases. I don't remember. There's some permission to read it. Everybody can't see this. But I can come in here and I can look at this and I can go, okay, 4.7 release. Great. Key changes. Great. So it does leave me in there. And then here's my list of contributors. Again, generated by me. Full change log. New contributors. Great. Like, this seems perfectly acceptable. The only thing I want to double check on is I want to quickly scan the milestone just to see if there's, hang on. Why is there an open item? What is the open item in this milestone? I thought I closed this. Fix for 29. Oh yeah, this is just supposed to be closed. Close. Fixed. Okay. Great. Go back. And I just want to double check the items listed here to see if there's anything else that I think should have shown up there that didn't. A lot of bug fixes, a lot of cleanups. The net 7 target is one of the big ones. Oh, we got 3 pages of stuff. There's some performance improvement stuff. Great. Great. Character counter visibility. Ba-bam. Ba-bam. Nothing too fancy. Nothing too fancy. Yeah, a lot of bug fixing. A lot of bug fixes in this release. Okay, cool. I like it. 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 Okay, so my opinion, release looks good. Check the assets. We can see it's got all the NuGet packages uploaded. It's got the demo app asset uploaded. Perfect. That's what we expect. Come back over here. I think if I go refresh at this point, I'm trying to remember if I can see the... I can't remember if I can see the artifacts on the release or if it hides them from me. There was something in here, and I can't remember. Something in the back of my mind is telling me that it hides the artifacts from you until the run is actually completed. But I can come in here and go, okay, production, prove and deploy. And then, clearly, GitHub throws a 500. Oh, GitHub. What are you doing to me? What are you doing to me? Okay, so the wiki task failed. That's exciting. Which is really disappointing since everything else about this has worked. Okay. Show me the failure. The job failed. Right. Oh, that's exciting. Okay, rerun failed jobs. Yes. I'm just going to assume GitHub blipped. Don't panic. These things will just auto-complete with the previous run. So it just has to rewalk its way through. Okay. And then we're going to review, production, approve. Okay. This should work. By the way, the NuGets should have gone out. Package was published. So package should be live on NuGet shortly. NuGet.org usually warns when you go through like the web UI that it can take up to an hour for indexing. Rarely have I seen it take an entire hour. It's usually in the order of like 15-ish minutes. Okay, and then publish release. Wants to double check. Fire in the hole. Full send. Okay, so aside from that weird 500 issue on GitHub, because of course that's going to happen when I'm trying to show off my new pretty toy, this makes me rather happy. I'm kind of happy with this. I'm somewhat tempted to kill off the environment on publish release. And we may clean that up a little bit, just because once I've approved these, I don't really feel like I need to go back and reapprove this. But whatever. Okay. Full greened, full send. New release is out the door. 4.7 is live. Whoop, 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 whoop. Okay. Small party. Okay, I'm having a party. I don't know if anyone else is. Okay. Okay. So now we got to do a couple things. Let's do a couple things. Step one. We come in here and we need to rev the versions. Now, I am going to propose that the next release is 5.0. I think that's where we're going to go. I've got enough stuff that I want to get in and done that I think it's going to need to happen. I believe that is also going to make this a 3.0 release. And I'm going to bump you up to 3.0 here as well, because I know there's some Ma app stuff I want to change as well. So this is one of the things that I don't really know what to do or how to do it well. Like, I don't have to rev this thing to 5.0 right now, but I do need to rev these versions a little bit so that preview releases pick it up. And maybe the better thing to do to be safe is we'll do this right up until we make significant changes. That's probably not a bad idea. We'll start here. But I'm going to propose that these versions are going to get revved pretty quickly. So that they flow all the way through. Only just hopping on, are these versions not globbed from the release tag? No. So you missed the earlier step. Let me show you. This, so one, I should grab that action run because that just makes me so happy. If you want to see awesomeness, or what I viewed as awesomeness, there's that. This entire workflow, rather than having it be kicked off and driven by any of that stuff, what I did instead is this trigger for actually doing a production release. I made it a manual execution with a single parameter. So it takes in the milestone, and then fires it off. But the milestone itself doesn't actually relate to the version. And the only reason I didn't want to relate them is because we're producing 3 different artifacts. It felt a little awkward to like type in the version at queue time. Like I could have typed in all the versions, but the more things I have to type, the more ways I get things wrong. And at least with the milestone, if I typo it, it's going to fail out early because like one of the initial steps where it tries to look the milestone up in the CLI, it won't find it and it'll fail. So great. I've protected myself against typos. So I kind of like for multiple artifacts in the repo, driving it with something checked in. I flip-flop on this versioning thing all the time. I have yet to decide what is the best way to do it. And this is my current thinking for repos that contain multiple artifacts, because it makes it a little easier to do the relationship between them. What I've also yet to figure out is doing, it feels like if you wanted to release all of these things separately, like I've very much tied these things together. And this NuGet package, this colors one, was built under the idea that, oh, we might release this one independently. The problem is since I've taken over, I don't think we've ever done it. Yeah. Yeah, and if you've got questions on it, Benjamin, hit me up, because there's a lot to this one, and it is, I think I spent most of my Christmas break playing on this, and I got bit by the automation bug. So, speaking of automation, so we're going to do something bad real quick. Bumping version numbers. Okay, boom. You'll note, master, pushed, done. Don't do that. That's bad. It's bad. It's bad. But in this case, I'm kind of okay with it. Okay. Couple other things that I didn't say earlier that should probably be called out. So, for one, most people know my love of, let's see, GitHub Snoop. Most people know my love of Snoop. So, just announced earlier today, 5.0 has released. So, if you are a user of Snoop, I recommend jumping in and grabbing it. There's a couple things to be aware of. If you are using Snoop targeting older apps that are using older unsupported frameworks, you're not going to be able to use 5.0. So just be aware that, kind of like how I've been dropping support for things as Microsoft does it, Snoop is doing the same thing. And it does matter for Snoop because it injects itself into the process. So what frameworks it supports is actually a big deal. So if you're trying to target an older WPF app, something maybe that's out of support, you may keep the older one around too. I just revved mine to 5.0 because I don't have that situation for anything I've touched. And then some nice minor improvements and cleanup. So this was pretty cool. Oh, well, Benjamin, I hope my actions inspire you. And hopefully some of the stuff I was hoping to do tonight will inspire you. So one of the things in building out this entire release pipeline that I came to adore was the GitHub CLI. Like, this thing is awesome. Straight up awesome. Last week we did discover plenty of places where the documentation sucks and it doesn't quite do what you expect. And little bugs like having to do this weird globbing stuff in PowerShell, yeah, it bothers me. It made me feel yucky. But aside from that, most of the time, this thing's awesome. And it's built to be both friendly for a developer running it locally as well as being used in a pipeline. And that is a hard balance to do on a CLI app. Authentication is right there. So inside of a GitHub action, like if you're running it locally as a dev, you probably want to do, I think it's GH login, if I remember correctly. What is the login command? Auth. Yeah, so you can run it through with the auth, and if you've got two-factor auth and whatnot set up on your account, it'll pop the browser, do the needful, etc., etc., etc. It's also got commands that like pop browsers. Don't use that in your action. That's a bad idea. That's not going to get you very far. Yeah, so the commands here, and then again, this environment variable, as long as you magically populate this with an appropriate token, you're good to go. Your GitHub token is probably good enough. In at least for everything I was doing, which was polling, pushing, committing. Good enough. And creating releases, manipulating releases, and uploading artifacts and downloading artifacts. So it pretty much just works. Pretty much just works. Yeah, from automatic click up. It's paying just for fun. You laugh, but I know somebody with a GitHub action that legitimately does pop browsers and manually does clicky automation to automate things where the API was that bad. Hint, subtle. Okay. I wanted to change this to be build release notes. And actually, before I get too carried away, let's get ourselves off on a branch here real quick. Create new branch. Nightly release. Okay, because that's where we're going. Switch branch. It's probably going to leave my change sitting pending over on the other side, I bet. Yeah, that's one of the things. Oh, no, it kept it. Yes. Thank you. You didn't remember what I had open, but whatever. We'll work with that. Okay, so I'm just going to rename that. Okay, so this nightly release. This is something that I built. So oftentimes people will push out CI builds, but with this project, what tends to happen is I will get on, I'll either be working on it one night. There'll typically be evenings or days where a bunch of stuff gets committed, right? I've got a block of time, I review some PRs, everything comes in. I don't really want to push out a preview package to NuGet every single time I merge, because that can be a lot. And yeah, nobody wants to deal with that. So what I've done instead is I've set up this nightly release process. And this nightly release process, I can either manually kick it, or there's a cron job that fires off at, I don't know, 1 a.m. or something to that effect. But what it does is check for changes. And the way it does it is it checks for the commit hash of a tag called nightly release. And then it checks the master hash and says, okay, are these two the same? And if the answer is yes, it says, okay, gotcha. Then there are no changes. Don't worry about it. If the hashes are different, it goes, we do have changes. Let's go ahead and do the update. So this is all well and good, except for this isn't what, I should say, this isn't working. Because at the end of the day, we get all the way down here. After it pushes the NuGets up, right? So it does the .NET NuGet push. It goes and it has to say, well, once I've pushed the NuGets, I need to update that tag that I looked for at the beginning, this nightly release tag, to say, okay, let's force that tag to resync up with master and just make sure that nothing happens. The other kind of drawback with this is if there is a commit to master between job A and job B, this thing's going to miss that commit in its nightly releases. It's not a big deal because there's so many contributions that it just means it's going to get picked up on the next day that we do work. Not a huge, and if it is a big issue, workflow dispatch, and away we go. However, in playing with the, well, I should say, let me point out. So first, this thing is failing. And if we look at nightly release, this thing is failing because when I refactored it to use my reusable workflows, what previously worked with this set of Git steps where it would update the tag is now failing because nowhere in this job have I actually done the checking out of the repo. So the working directory for this action is just a bare repo. Well, I should say a bare repo with the NuGet artifacts downloaded into it. There's not a lot in there. So you try to run the Git command and Git goes, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no Git repository here. So there's a couple things we could do. One, I could go through, do the repo, get all of this working. But this whole idea of using this tag as kind of this change tracking marker has never felt great for me. And when I was playing with the GitHub CLI, I realized I'm an idiot. What I really want to check for is between the is the current hash on master different from the last run of this pipeline? Because if the hash on master is different from the last run of this pipeline, I would like to run. That's the check that I want to do. And I was realizing that when I was playing with this, I'm like, well, the GitHub CLI looks like it can certainly do this. So you'll note there's the run and the workflows. I was like, well, let's play around with this. So if we do GitHub CLI, let me bring this up, make it a little bigger. List workflow, give it the name, nightly release, great. Branch, master, great. You know, this thing, it even generates a pretty looking table, which is pretty cool. And you'll note it has this little ID here. Okay, great. None of this is actually giving me a commit hash, which is what I want. And so if I come up here, I can do this and I can say, okay, well, let's view that guy. And I get all kinds of information. And it's okay, but you'll note it's still missing the hash. And that's when I realized, I'm like, oh, well, this whole output, nobody wants to parse this in their CLI. Like there's colors, there's this fancy stuff. It's pretty to look at. It's not really great to play with here. I was like, well, what we could do instead is, as you can see, I've done this before. There's this -JSON switch that you can pass to it. And the -JSON switch says, no, you can't pass it bare. You actually have to give it some arguments. You have to tell it exactly what you want. And in my case, it's like, well, I kind of want to know the commit hash. And I, you know, the name was bonus. I was just kind of trying to figure out how I could concatenate multiple of these things together. I'm like, that looks pretty easy. That looks real easy. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, let's go. So I think what I want to do is I want to kill off that tag altogether and just use this, because this will give me a more accurate check. And I don't have to worry about trying to do this using a tag for something that a tag is not meant for. Because I'm openly using a tag and moving a tag, which is something you generally shouldn't do. And being all weird and bad. So I think what we're going to do is just not do that, because that's bad. And just build up something like this and make it work. So that's the game plan. And hopefully we fix it before that cron job triggers so I can see it work. And we can workflow dispatch it and make it go. But yeah, that's not nearly as fun. So, okay. So step one, we need to go back to getting this. And I believe what I want is this, once again, passing this JSON in. So let's figure out exactly what we need. I really just care about the number, I think. Is that really all I care about? Oh, dear heavens. Nope, number is not what I want. Database ID. Well, that's weird. But that might be what I'm actually after, because the magical number I'm looking for is something that's 38365949987. So, yeah, so we don't want all that. Let's try database ID, I guess. Make my terminal window bigger. Make sure my big head isn't in the way. Okay. Perfect. So this is going to give me back a list. And I think that's the number I want. 33987. Perfect. I wonder if I can limit it. Is there a... What else is on the end of this guy? Limit. Maximum number of runs to fetch. Excellent. I would like limit 1. And this is what I mean by a nice CLI. All CLIs should, like, anybody building a command line app, especially if you're building a production E1, make it nice for users, make it nice for scripting. It is possible to do both. Okay. I wish it was not written in Go and was in .NET, but yeah, minor things, little things. Okay, so step 1, we're gonna do something like this where we get the thingy. So let's come in here. We're gonna end up getting rid of most of this. And worth noting, I do have my shell set to PowerShell. I got bit by that a lot when I was coding. I kept forgetting to set the shell on the individual runs, and then all of a sudden I'd use PowerShell syntax and it'd be a bash terminal. And dang nabbit. Finally I was like, you know what? Let's just set the default at the top. Make them all the same. Everyone's happy. PowerShell core works everywhere. Make it work. Okay, so what I would like, and let's go with GitHub Actions context. Close you. Okay, I would like to find, I believe there is a context that will tell me the name of my current workflow. I think it is the GitHub context. And the name of the action currently running. Yep, that's the guy. So I want you, not be nightly release. I want you to be github.action. Okay. And then ideally, do you also tell me the this is the ref of the action being executed? No, don't want that. Don't want that. I kind of want the, if it's possible, I may have to hard code the branch. Is that a bad thing? I don't know if it is, because I don't really want to fully form ref of the branch or tag that trigger the workflow run. This is the branch or tag name for workflows triggered by pull request. For workflows triggered by release, this is the release tag created. I wonder what happens for workflow dispatch. I guess you still specify the branch. That's fine. I think we want to go with GitHub ref name. Yeah, so let's do GitHub name. Do that. Database ID, limit 1. Okay, so key thing, we're going to go with, let's see, workflow list. And then if we come over here, there was this little lovely thing. Steal that. So my PowerShell sucks, in case that wasn't obvious to everybody. We're going to come here. We're going to come here. And then, nope. We're going to do this. And then let's see, run ID should be equal to JSON sub 0 dot database ID. That should get me that. Okay, problem solved. Next, we need to take that ID, and actually, I suppose we could test this. could actually test this real quick. So let's go workflow list, right? Something like that. And then kind of wondering about just straight up inlining this. Just straight up inline this. Because that's kind of what I want instead. Then I should be able to just verify that this works. Okay. That's good enough. Okay, so that gets me there. So now I've got run ID variable. Now that I've got that, I would like to do this. Run ID. Huh? Oh, I don't have a run ID. Did that just kick off a run or something? A little confused. Okay. Okay, that was confusing to me. So I do not have run ID because I did not do that. Okay. Now I have run ID. Okay, that's better. We don't need name, but we do need Headshaw. I'm actually somewhat tempted to just straight up do this and convert. It was just selecting a job within a run, not kicking off. Ah, okay, perfect. Got it. Thank you. Convert from JSON. I think the signature is this. No. What is the convert from JSON? I guess what I actually want to do is this. My C# brain is not happy, but it will do. Okay, so that's going to come here. Nightly release hash. Gets that. And now we don't have to have the tag at all. That all works. Okay, now, next thing I would like to know, do you have the ability to get me the hash off of the remote without me cloning? Don't know if you do. It's not a big deal if you don't. What I'm looking for is branches. And I don't know if it's going to have it here because this is more about, yeah, not too surprised that it doesn't have it. Yeah, not too surprised. So we're gonna leave the. I was gonna see if I could simplify out some and not have to do this fetch depth to 0 checkout just to get access to it, but that'll work. That will work. Okay. The other thing to be aware of is GitHub did change the way that you set output and environment variables. Be aware on their docs page at the. I don't like it because if you do a search, their search jumps you to like headings inside the page. There's tabs at the very top of the page that you can toggle so that their examples show you either PowerShell, Bash, or something else. So just be aware, if you're looking at the GitHub docs and you're like, why is this not showing me PowerShell? Scroll all the way to the top of the page, toggle the tab, and try again. It's a little annoying, but it works. Okay, so that gets me there. This gets me here. I don't need this test. That was testing. Let's see. This is the get versions. And this runs if should change. Yep. That looks good there. That looks good there. Builds the artifacts. Has the condition. Get version. Check for changes. These two being tied together is kind of superfluous. Push NuGets, and then we don't need to update the tag. So the failure from before is fixed because we just deleted that code. Okay, so we are on a branch. Great. Let's see. Updating the nightly release process to not need the git tag anymore. Okay, so let's test it. So if we go nightly release, and this will legitimately send a NuGet package out the door, but why not? Why not? Run workflow. Okay. Off to the races. I want to see this thing go. We're going to let it run for a minute and then go do some other work because the build artifacts, the build and test can take a little while it's going. Oh. But not if the check for change. Oh, yeah. Remember that bit about how you auth your GitHub CLI? You should remember to do it, otherwise it doesn't work. Okay. Let's see. I don't remember. Did I do my envs above or below? Env above. Yeah. Minor details. If you don't actually like set the value. Cool Burns, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. Having fun with GitHub Actions and automating release processes. Let's see. Setting token for GitHub CLI. Up we go. There we are. Okay. So that. And we come back over here. We go back over here. Let's see. Nightly release. Run workflow. And I want to be on my branch because I'd like to test it there, please. And in theory, because we have done this, it should pull the appropriate branch, which means running from a branch and then comparing against or grabbing the run list from a branch. Oh, I don't know what this is going to do. Yeah, because you're querying the run list for a workflow on a branch where it previously hasn't succeeded. Oh, that's actually a good point. Maybe I should filter this down further. Let's look at that because we may want to limit it to like successful runs. Let's see here. Let's go back and do this real quick. Oh, don't assign. Not yet, at least. Can I filter out output using a JQ expression? So we could do that. Probably not that big of a deal. I'm just wondering if it fails, do I want it retrying every night? Or should I go... Maybe I don't want it retrying. Because if there's a failure, I probably need to do something and then kick it. Okay, that looks like another failure, but let's... Yeah. Could not find... Sorry, what? Oh. Oh, that's interesting. That is not the right thing. Okay. And we really should rename this from check tag to being something a little more check go with check for changes. That seems better. Okay, so we'll do that. But this is not the variable that I want. I mistakenly assumed the name of the action currently running or the ID of a step. Right. That's not helpful. I want the action name always. How do I always get it? Path where the action is located, don't care. For a step, this is the ref, action repository, actor. No. What? Oh, come on. How do I... Ah, this. This is actually what I want. Okay. Got it. Okay. Using workflow name. Okay. Third time's the charm. And this is how my last week went. Lots of red. Red everywhere. Okay. Come on. Get past the one check. All I want. Just want you to get past that so I can move on to going and fixing other things. I do love that my email is blowing up with GitHub messaging me all kinds of failures. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Has updates. True. Which is pretty much guaranteed since we're querying from a branch and comparing the commit hash on the branch to the one on master. Are they going to be different? Pretty much guaranteed. Pretty much guaranteed. Okay, so this is actually going to run. And I think, let me check the changes. I just want to validate what it actually generated here. So workflow, nightly release, perfect. Branch, nightly release, perfect. Did all that. Nightly release hash, has changes. Wonderful. Okay, so that will tell me if there have been changes on the branch since we've done it. We could change this off of to not compare against master and to compare against something different. Whatever. Right? You know, I'm wondering if it makes more sense rather than getting the master commit hash this way. I'm wondering if it makes more sense to just say, is my current hash different? Right? So rather than getting the master hash, compare the basically the last run hash with my current one, and if they're different, then run. That makes a lot more sense. That makes a lot more sense. And I think I get that in here. Look at that. GitHub SHA. So I think we do that. I think that makes a lot more sense. Because then I don't have to do this garbage. We're gonna do this maneuver. This maneuver. That. Last run hash. That goes there. That goes there. Check for changes. We should rename this to be and then we can get rid of this checkout because we don't even need the checkout anymore, which will make this whole thing run faster. Yeah, I like that better. Also worth noting, output variables are strings, which is annoying at times. But you'll note I intentionally did this garbage because of that reason. Also, I could do that. Okay, so I think that will work better. Rather than comparing with rather than comparing with hash on master, compare with last run on current branch. So we should be able to test the conditional this way as well. So in theory, this guy's going to run one more time. And actually, you know what I can do? I can just cancel the workflow here. Right? Because I don't actually, once it gets past the initial check for changes, I don't actually need to build or push NuGets. That's just superfluousness on top of it. I am curious what it returns for branch. What is my branch name? Something about nightly release. Yeah. So I'm curious what this returns if I do nightly release. Do I see? Perfect. 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 So it will see it. Excellent. Excellent. So this will be a good test. So it should see a difference on the first run. And then I should be able to requeue it and have it not see a difference. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. And we may want to get slightly fancier. And let's see. Let's see. Fail to deter. Oh, right. Because I no longer have a clever. Okay. One other thing to be aware of with the GitHub CLI, you can cheat with it when you're inside of a repo, because it will look at your Git repository to know where you are. The problem is if you are not inside of a repository, you need to tell it your repository. And you do that with, it's like capital R dash dash repo. I thought I had a sample in here. Yeah, dash dash repo. You can do this to tell it the repository that we're in. There's actually a set default or something like that to set the default repo. Let's see. GH repo. Let's see. Set default. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, so I want that. I want to do that maneuver there, but I want to do it with that variable. That. Okay. Setting default repo. Come back over here and rerun that. It should make me happy. Nightly release run. Because the other workflow I want to clean up is the icon generation. Because at this point, it's not going through PR verification anyway. So I'm kind of just going to have it just check itself in. Seems to make the most sense. Unknown command set default. Wait, what?
set a repository explicitly. GitHub repo set default. What? Set default unknown command. Huh? Something seems very, very wrong. Let's see, viewing creation. You know what? Rather than futzing with it, what? You should be full release. There we go. Wow, great. We're just going to take this guy and I'm going to just tack it onto the end of each of these. That parses, that parses. Let's see, do the same thing there. We'll do that. Okay. Because apparently something about that thing is wrong. Setting repo. I will futz with figuring out why setting default doesn't work later. I am wondering if there is a mismatch between my local version of the GitHub CLI and what's out actually on the agent, which is a possibility. The GitHub CLI actually gets updates fairly frequently, which is nice. I like my tools getting frequent updates. Speaking of tools with frequent updates, hang on one second. The Kraken had an update today. Just make sure I'm on the right profile. So, Kraken 9.0. Okay, can't show it there. 9.0.1 released today, and there's not a lot in here. It's a lot of bug fixes. But if you're on OS X, a lot of people were reporting performance issues and high CPU load, specifically when they had the UI theme set to sync with system for whatever reason. So that bug has been fixed. Huzzah. A few other key ones that made me happy. So the performance hit with LFS, because that was definitely noticeable. The submodule stuff I'm just happy to see, because I would occasionally bump into these with all kinds of stuff. So that was annoying. Yeah. And then this one here for the manual update of a token, usually not that big of a deal. Most of the time, if you get to that stage, somewhere else in the integration's gone wrong. But lots of cool bug fixes. Go get 9.0.1. It cool. It ran in 21 seconds. Oh. So, fun story. Yeah, so the problem is it's grabbing the runs of itself and it's going to detect itself. This is pretty much guaranteed to always match. Let's do, okay, so let's do something like echo last hash. All right, so we're going to do that just for logging purposes, but it's going to detect itself if we do that. So it probably makes the most sense to just change the limit, I think. Because inside of the run, it's going to always grab itself. I think that makes the most sense. JSON. You forgot an H. Oh, thank you. Oh, oh, there.
Gracias. One of the benefits of live coding is as long as you don't feel the embarrassment of people seeing you make all the mistakes, you get a lot of useful help. So appreciate that. Okay, so I think the easiest thing is just go limit 2 and grab the second one. I think that's the easiest. Like, and you'll notice I'm ignoring a lot of error checking because the only time there's not going to be a bunch of runs is on different branches. I don't actually care about that much. It's really not that big of a deal to me. Because the only time you get a different branch is on workflow dispatch and on testing stuff. So it's like, it's self-inflicted. It's self-inflicted. So we're going to do that. Grab second hash so that we do not affect cells. Should probably leave a comment here. Let's see. Grab the last 2 runs, since the latest run will be the current one executing. I suppose the other thing we could do is we could write one of those filters. Because I'm willing to bet if we look at like status, there's what are the, because I'm willing to bet, I'm willing to bet we could check status and say if, grab the first one that is not running, for example, and grab that. Because theoretically, you could queue up a bunch of these things all at once, but it's like, I don't care to deal with those situations. There's not enough people with access to be clicking these things for the once or twice where that's going to happen. And when it does, the solution is just run again, which is a pretty small, weensy little thing. See, this is a false green, 21-second execution. Workflow runs for building this project are only 21 seconds when things go wrong. Okay, so it moved on. So that seems to be good. So has updates true. There's the last hash. So that seems to have worked. So that executed. That's fine. Gets the version numbers. We're just going to cancel because I don't feel like waiting. And then I want to run it one more time. Nightly release. Run workflow. And this one, wait a minute, what are we comparing against? Headshaw. So this should be, yes, these should match because there have been no changes now. Because there have been no changes on this branch, this thing has changes, should be false. This should be another 21-second execution, give or take a little bit. Since there's 2 queues from the same branch, hash hasn't changed. They should both be the same. Everyone's happy. Well, I think. One of my tabs is making a bunch of noise and I can't figure out which one it is. Not that one. Not that one. The noisy tab. That one. Come here. You tab. Who's pinging me? Sorry, question. Are you press enter to there? No, no problem. Feel free to ask away. Love questions. Okay, perfect. Check for changes. Has updates false. Last hash. Cool. I think the only thing I want to do is I want to echo last hash. Just for sanity's sake, I want to echo these things out, and then that'll be. Are you planning to port Material Design Toolkit to other platforms like WinUI, Maui, or Blazor? Great question. Probably. Let me get this pushed real quick, and then I'll give a more complete answer. Logging, and then going to pull request this guy in, compare pull request. Please process to no longer need the git tag to check for changes. Oh, I should close out the pull request. Let me close that milestone, and then question time. Question time. Oh, there's the close button. I want the close button. Let me close it. There we go. Great. Okay, so the question about other platforms. So I gotta be careful how I say this. One, some people will argue that WPF is dead, and especially with Microsoft's recent updates about making it more community driven and that kind of thing. I firmly believe that it is not dead yet, but all frameworks die eventually, right? So like WPF has proven its worth over, what's it been? Close to 2 decades, I believe. And there's still like large parts of Visual Studio are using WPF. Like there's an investment there that cannot go away quickly. And part of the reason why I would say it's not dead is there's so much investment there, and it's been bulletproof. The only major investments I see Microsoft bringing for it, like in the last several years, the key things that they brought were, one, making sure it was supported on latest versions of .NET. So in that regard, WPF is going to continue running on latest .NET, right? So WPF will get feature updates as .NET gets updates by virtue of we're rolling forward with it. So it's probably not things specific to the framework, but things like language, that kind of thing, that sort of thing will come in. Yeah, like the comment in the chat, they brought WebView 2 to it as well. One of the other big ones is like high DPI support as hardware needed it. There's going to be small things like that, but for feature type work, WPF is probably not going to receive a lot of love. And Microsoft doesn't have a ton of resources invested in it. Their resources right now are more around like curating pull requests issues. Like I think it's only maybe one guy, two guys. Like it's not a big team, just to be clear. Their investment in it is pretty small. And some people freaked out about that. But it also doesn't need a ton of work. There's the docs for it, because it's been so stable for so long, you can find docs that are 8 years old, 9 years old, and they're still perfectly valid. Great. Like, feel free to keep using it. But with that said, there are a lot of new emerging platforms. WinUI, specifically WinUI 3, is the one that has caught my attention a lot. Specifically because it is supposed to be the latest update of Microsoft's XAML stuff. Maui gets to be a weird case, and I'm less likely to go to Maui. One, because they kind of did material themselves. And two, Maui is kind of this abstraction layer on top of a UI framework rather than a UI framework itself. Like it wants to be that shared experience, and they've spent an enormous investment in the tooling on it. But it really is kind of like when you look at the underlying technology underneath it, Maui is a UI abstraction on top of UI frameworks. And if I'm going to port this, I'm more likely to port it to a given framework, not necessarily to an abstraction. The Avalonia and Uno are the two third-party ones that are also rather interesting. And I think for a while I was kind of trying to figure out which one of them was going to win, and it seems like they're both doing remarkably well. So it's like both of those are potentials. The hard part with this is any port of the library to another UI framework is a huge investment. There is, in fact, a WinUI experiment branch, and I keep rebasing this every so often, but I do have a WinUI 3 port that I started playing with just to see how feasible it is. Because with this library, you have to start almost from base principles. Like the simplest control is probably like a button or the icon itself, just to get that ported. And with a button, that's usually where I like to start, because buttons just complicated enough to make sure that you hit all the pain points. But button has like a ripple. It's got mouse over states. It's got the press state. And so it's complicated enough that you can kind of start to exhaust what things let you go. Yeah. So, and just doing that on WinUI was kind of painful. So there's a lot of this where I do definitely want to do it. And if people are interested in helping on one of those ports, I would be very happy to work and help get one going on this. Me doing it by myself is probably going to take a while. And so I've been very slow to commit to a UI framework port yet, because I know how much work that's going to be. It's going to be a ton of work. But I think it's very possible. Some people also don't like the material design on Windows desktop apps. They're like, that's Google's design language. Why are you cluttering our Windows desktop apps with Google's design paradigm? To those people, I say yuck. Like, there could be beautiful apps written. Like, I personally have to laugh if I see that those people doing it while running Chrome. That just really makes me laugh. Because things like Gmail and whatnot, like, you use material design apps on Windows every day. Especially with the idea of like PWAs, where the line between web and desktop is getting blurred even more every day. Yeah, it's possible. And that's the other reason why thank you. That's the other reason why I don't know if I would necessarily invest in going to a web platform like Blazor. Is there are, I don't know, I've lost count. There are a ton of reasonably good web-based material design implementations, including Google's. Like, Google has their own reference implementation for it. So and I don't think they've even completed, because I was looking earlier today, and I don't think their reference implementation has completed updating for Material Design 3 yet, even though it's been out since I think last February. Yeah, Mudblazor. So I think if I was to update, it would be sticking to a UI framework, not an abstraction. So probably wouldn't consider Maui. And to some degree, they've kind of done a material-esque thing in some regards. And if you target Android, you can always get it, and there's stuff like that. And I'm less likely to go after a web platform either, because of I don't know, I feel like I'd just be cluttering an existing space. But targeting something like WinUI, so that there's an alternative to the Fluent design out there, or targeting like Uno or Avalonia, would probably be where the next port would go. So that was a very long answer to say would be yes. I am definitely interested in porting to another framework. Been very slow about doing it. And just to be clear on the effort level that goes into it, is I think it would probably be close to 1,000 hours. I don't know for sure, and I there might be a smaller number for MVP, but I think it's probably close to that. So to port the entire library over, and it does get a little weird too, because the amount of porting that you have to do somewhat depends on the number of controls in the default set that you're covering, right? Like, if it was just a matter of, hey, give us buttons, fonts, and text boxes, and maybe like checkboxes and radio buttons or something, that's smaller, right? But the moment we then go, well, how do we do the dialog host? How do we do the drawer host? Like, so I think 1,000 hours is probably the let's do the whole thing. An MVP, there's, depending on what people are willing to tolerate, there's probably a smaller thing in there. Yeah, that's part of why I've been slow to commit to doing it, because
my little WinUI experiment one has gotten me far enough to where I feel like I've got a decent handle on what it's going to take. And it's going to take a bit. And some of it is me just learning the other frameworks. Like a lot of this, there's some things that work really well or that you can do in WPF that there just aren't equivalent APIs for. And so then the question becomes, okay, I have to reimagine how this was done previously and do it a different way. Right? And there's a line to be drawn between, well, how much do I want to match my old stuff versus how much do I want to go through and do it? Do you think WinUI is mature enough for production? So WinUI 3, yes. I think it is mature enough. I think the framework and the runtime is definitely mature enough for production. The big limitation I see with WinUI 3 is there are a lot of APIs. Like in WPF, they hid a lot of the underlying Win32 APIs away from you and made it stupid simple. My current go-to, and they may have fixed this, so take this with a grain of salt, but like 6 months ago, something of what I would consider simple, like setting the icon of my window, required me to drop down into Win32 APIs. And I went, yuck. Now, is it doable? Absolutely. But that was the limitation I saw in WinUI, is everything's possible. You can do, as far as I could tell, you could do everything in WinUI that you could do in WPF, and there were more potential features available because they've got the updated XAML language in there. They've got fancier like compile bindings with Xbind. So there's a lot of nice features in there. But some of the APIs might require you to drop into low-level stuff. Whereas if you're looking for the smooth, what I would call, people will hate me for this, more of a refined WPF experience where they've kind of put a pretty face on what may be an ugly API under the hood, you may not find it. You may have to work with the ugly API. But as far as like the runtime and the framework, yeah, it is solid. But like I said, some things, in my opinion, were much harder than I felt like they needed to be. And poking around on the repo, what I saw was the team going, yep, on our roadmap. Yep, on our roadmap. We know that these are pain points. We know we want to make this easier for people. We're working on getting it done. Like, great. Please make it hurt less. Yeah, no problem. You asked a question that is in an area that I spend a lot of time in, for what it's worth. Okay, so next thing, I made a boo-boo apparently when I set up this. What did I do wrong? So I changed the name of some stuff. I changed the name of some stuff, and I apparently have broken my big features or improvements that you were working on. Is there some sort of roadmap? Oh, yes. So the key ones to be aware of. Actually, all three of the pinned issues. So the 5.0 changes. So I suspect the next release of this library is going to be 5.0. And it is going to come. Basically, I've been building up a list of things that are bothering me and breaking. And there's been a lot of PRs that have come in where I've said, well, okay, we can add in the new feature, but don't kill the old stuff off yet. I don't want to break people. We've been flagging stuff as obsolete and whatnot so that people have a chance to deal with it. But these are all going to be breaking changes that are coming, with the biggest one being this theme brush rename. And this sounds like just a theme, because I named it theme brush rename. It sounds like it's just renaming of brushes. That's kind of a bold-faced lie. It is changing up the way the theming in the library works, hopefully for the last time. I want to take, so I've got a branch that's been running for this that will do a lot of this changes, but I also want to go through and change up the number of brushes we have, because there's been a lot of cases where people are wanting to say, hey, how can I change the color of X inside of your template? It's like, well, you can change that brush, but by the way, that brush is used in these 12 other places. It's like, that's not a great experience. So I'd like to get it down to where every brush is ideally only used once, or is only logically used once. So, that if you set, if I want to set the border of all of my text boxes, for example, I set that one brush and then they all work, right? So it's a lot, even though that may be used in 3 or 4 templates, it's at least logical on where they all are. I would like to get the generation of all of these brushes, though, is a decent amount of work, and I started in on a generator to actually gen all of that code for me, because I want to do this once, control it in one place, and then have all of the code built out, because I've built it such to where you can interact with the theming stuff either in XAML resource dictionaries or via C#, because some people like the IntelliSense approach of doing it, and some people like the XAML approach. And I think both are fine. It's just which one you prefer, but I don't want to duplicate that code and try to keep those in sync. So I want to source generator my way to victory on those and make them both work, which gets mildly more difficult because you can't source generator XAML files, which is a pain in the butt. So I have to gen before the XAML compile in order to make that work. But I've got a branch of a proof of concept of that working. The other thing I want to do is take another look at the Control-ZX theming work that they did, because there's a few design decisions that I don't like in it, like static properties that make it hard for unit testing. But I've been using it on a project in my day job, and there's some stuff about it that's a little nicer than my initial design. So I want to take another look at it and just either move my design to be very compatible with it, or vice versa. Because we have that MAW-apps compatibility, I don't want to break that. And moving to where we could use the same theme manager that MAW-apps is using has a lot of advantages. But I also don't want to kill my testability, because I'm a huge proponent of testing in my WPF apps, and so I don't want to sacrifice that at all. Yeah, and that's part of why I have both places, is because some people there's layers that people want to set. There's the currently the way it works, and it's not a bad experience in my opinion, is you can set a primary color, a secondary color, and then a theme, which is basically light or dark. And if you want the simple mode for WP for this library, that's easy mode. Here, I'll just show it to you real quick. So this app.xaml shows all the cases, but if you want easy mode, this is easy mode. Is you set your base theme, your primary color, your secondary color. These are both enums. There's a built-in color palette for, I don't know, 16, 18 different ones from the material design stuff. Done. No problems. There's some nice bits. Inherit will follow your Windows theme. So if you are like, well, I don't care about light or dark, let the user pick, you can just say, yeah, follow the user's Windows theme. If they've got a dark theme, they probably want a dark theme app. Let them have it. And then color adjustment is for cases of, with the material design palettes, the foreground and background colors don't always have great contrast ratios. And so if you care less about your specific color and care more about accessibility, you can do this, and this will automatically adjust your theme colors to make sure that you have appropriate contrast ratios between your foreground and your background. So, but some people have designers who work on their projects who go, dear heavens, do not touch my color. I gave you the RGB code. Use that. Okay, fine. Just don't set this property and you don't get that. Problem solved. But yeah, and you can also do like custom colors, or you can do the resource dictionary approach. All are valid, all work. It's just which way do you want to manage it? My opinion, this covers the like 70% case of most people who are like, I just want to start an app and I want it to look good. Great, do this. Done. Don't think too hard. I mean, technically, you do this and you do this and you're done. Oh, I guess I will show this. Where is it? I started this repo. I'm working on a .NET template for what? Here, I guess I can share the repo for anyone who's interested. For what I see as a good starting point, like a starting point for WPF apps. So people, easy to use with lots of control. Well, thank you, I appreciate that. I do try to make it easy for consumers as well as people working in the repo. I try to not make it be too painful. But this is what will be a .NET new template of getting started. I wanted to have something simple to show people how to get going with. There's a balance between your .NET new templates having too much that you have to delete after the fact versus not having enough. So I'm trying to balance how much I actually put in here. But this sets up the material design library. It sets up your startup with a custom main with the DI already previously done. So check YouTube videos. I've got a great one on dependency injection in WPF. So if this is new to you, this shows how to set it up. It uses the MVVM community toolkit to set up the view models so that you can get nice observable objects. I tried to leave links in here, an observable property, showing a relay command. Tried to have a nice balance of what I'm showing versus what's not there. I'm still trying to figure out what's the right balance between how much do I put in the demo versus how much do I don't. And I also want to get, so this is going to be like the starting template, but I want this to have a couple other templates for like different Windows layouts, because there's a couple common layouts, especially with like material design, right? Like you get the tabs on the side with the fly out and that kind of thing for navigation, like what you see in Gmail and whatnot. Like that's a common layout. And so I want a, not a project template, but an item template for things like that, so that if people want a starting point for those windows, they can have that kind of setup going. This also sets up this project sets up a unit test project. It sets up AutoMocker to do the testing, shows some basic unit tests. Just again, this is enough to get people all the way in. I'm wanting, when I finally get it to a point where I can actually like build this NuGet and release it, I'm probably going to do a series of videos walking through everything in it, because this is kind of a choose your own adventure a little bit on this. Is there's a lot in here, and I took this as a this is Kevin's strong opinion of how WPF apps should be built, but you probably want to tweak it for yourself, right? And there's some templating stuff that I need to change. I need to change these user secrets so that gets generated, that kind of thing. This isn't quite ready for consumption yet, but if people wanted to look at it and play with it, but it shows how to do your build props, your targets. It does centralized package management. I was trying to decide if this thing should also have like possibly some templates for what I use for like GitHub Actions, but then that means I have to figure out what I actually like, because I think all of my WPF apps have slightly different versions of the same thing, and so I need to consolidate that. So something I've been poking at, but if people are interested, like I said, I think I'm going to try to get it to a 1.0 at some point, and then do like either a series of videos or a series of blogs or something walking through, because there's a lot like I tried to cram as much as I could into a very small amount of demo. Because for a template, you want the template to be useful, but if people have to delete a ton of stuff, there's a lot in there. Weird. I don't know why it flagged NuGet management on there. Yeah, centralized package management is one of those things that the material design library has used it since it was in preview, because it was in preview for like 2.5 years or something ridiculous, before they finally got it going. But most of it was, they had it in and it was working, but there was no tooling support for it. You had to do it manually, which sucked. But now Visual Studio and whatnot is hip to understanding, oh, if you open up the NuGet package manager and you've got this file, I edit there and that kind of thing. So, which is muchos better. So, but I set up all of this and I tried to leave in comments about useful stuff about where things would go and that kind of thing. So, like I said, there's a lot crammed in here. There's also like an editor config with what I think is appropriate settings, little things like the XAML indent size. I'm really tempted to do like a XAML styler setup as well, because the default for XAML styler is just a little bit different. It's one of those things. I have opinions and they're just a little bit different off the defaults, but it's one of those, I would like people to be able to start with this project and then go, ideally with a blog post or videos of links of what all the things are. That way, if there's something they don't understand, they can jump to that location and read about it, and then decide, yeah, I don't like that, I'm going to delete it, or I'm going to change it. Great, that's fine. This is meant to be a jump off point, this is not meant to be gospel. This is my strong opinions of where I want to start with my apps. If other people want to start there too, I think it's a great place, and you're off to the races. Okay. But I broke, sorry, that was a long detour for a moment. I broke my PR validation. So specifically this thing here, I added a branch policy. Oh, nope, that's not it. Here, I'm sorry, a branch protection rule. And this status check. And apparently that status check doesn't get executed by my PR verification pipeline. That doesn't seem right. Let's go looking. Time to go to work. Thanks for your time. No problem. Have a good day at work. Let's see. PR verification. Let's take a look. So there is, when you're setting up the, oh, I bet you it's supposed to just be build. I thought I had renamed this to build artifacts, but then I think I nested it inside of here. Yeah. Yeah, I changed the, yeah, that's what's wrong. So this needs to not be, I would like this to be build. Yeah, see, you lied to me. I would like you to be build. I would like you to not be that. And I would like to save changes. And I need to find my phone. Stand by for factor auth stuff. Come on, find the push. There you go. There you go. And two-factor auth. Let me in. Gracias. Okay. Okay. There's that. There's that. Now the question is, will this update or do I need to recreate the PR? Probably need to recreate the PR. That's really disappointing. You know what? Oh, I kind of want to test this. Normally I just bypass it and say, screw it. But I think in this case, we're going to close the PR. And then if I hit reopen, does it re-trigger? Yes, yes, yes. Good, 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 good. Okay, so that's what I was hoping it would do. Okay, so we're just going to close and reopen, and that will be That will be a simple enough toggle. Okay, there's that, there's that, there's that. Okay, well, that is thinking about what it has done. Let's go and look at fixing up the icon update. Go here, back into here. So I think what I would like to do. Did I not push a change? Oh, this is on master. Yeah, whatever. No, that's the button. Discard changes. Really should be focusing more on git lens. Git lens purdy. Okay, let's go here. Let's go here. Let's go here. Okay, so the icon update. So right now there is this fun little bit where GitHub Actions can't chain into other actions. And so things like this where it creates a pull request are great, except for it doesn't work. And by it doesn't work, what ends up happening is the PR verification pipeline never triggers. So I'm kind of thinking, and it's kind of pointless. It's kind of pointless. What I'm thinking I want to do is just straight up run the build pipeline. And if the build passes, I'm just gonna push this straight on in. Like, there's not really a good reason not to. I don't think so. I think we just do it. I think that makes the most sense. So I think the easiest way to go about this. So we've got the build artifacts. And I think what we can do is we can get away with a couple things. So one, we're going to fix this so that it uses the shallow fetch, because we don't need it. We don't need it fetching all the things. Let's see here. Yeah. Sorry. YAML indentation hard. What's the keyword stroke? There we go. Okay, so that will do a shallow fetch. Don't want to get all the things. This is doing a setup there. I kind of want to just check for changes. See, this guy here is doing a lot. This wonderful little create pull request from Peter Evans is wonderful. So thank you, Peter Evans. This is a great task. The problem I have with it, though, is it is kind of biting me a little bit. And I'm kind of thinking that there's no reason this guy shouldn't just straight push. I'm thinking. Because if it runs the generation and everything works, let's just push. Like the PR verification, it's literally going to do nothing beyond run this. Like, that's it. So let's just bring in the build artifacts. Because I see no reason not to. We'll do build artifacts. And this is going to be, let's see. Let's give it a name. Build. Nope. Do that. we'll do that. We'll build with empty versions, which is fine. That's kind of what we want. And then, shut up, phone. Shut up. If the build succeeds, I think we just straight push. Push updates. I don't see any reason to do this complicated, like, right? I think we just do it. Yeah, I think we just straight do it. So if we come down here, it looks kind of like this. Except for we're going to change a little bit. Unindent. So we'll do that. GitHub Actions bot. Let's see. What was the thing before? Let's see. Icon update. That's really not accurate anymore. Auto-generated pull request. Yeah, that's not really. And we used to use this guy, but I kind of feel like we just go this route instead. Icon. Do this. Pack. Icon. Update. So this sets message. This auto commits all changed files. Which the only thing that will be changed should be from this. You know what I kind of want to do, though? I kind of want to do the... changes. I kind of want to do the commit here. The running the build shouldn't do anything. There should be no extra files that get modified as part of running the build. But just in the off chance that there are, I really, really only want this guy picking up changes that were generated here. And we could probably get fancier about bailing early if this guy doesn't have any changes. We'll see. Like, this is kind of a little slow because of the building and the tests and all that stuff, but whatever. For now, we're going to ignore it. And then we don't need this anymore because we aren't going to be... Yeah, we're not going to be making branches. We're not going to be doing that. We're just going to straight up push. Oh, shoot. I forgot to make my branch again. This button. Create new branch. Icon. Update. And switch branch. You should have the one change still. Great. Oh, darn you. I don't want the diff. I wish it would remember what I had selected. That would be nice. Okay, so set the user, do the commit. Effectively do the PR verification bit. Because that's the main step inside of all of this. Oh, we should probably do this maneuver here. Oh, and are we using the... No, this is not using the GitHub CLI. We don't need the environment variable. We do need Windows because we're doing Windowsy stuff inside of here. The build and test requires Windows because we run UI tests, which requires starting an app, which requires Windows. Because WPF Windows only. This I think is going to get overridden. Build artifacts. I think this thing also has a checkout. I'm wondering if I should kill this off. I'm wondering if I should move this out. Make colors do the clone. I don't know. We'll see what it does. I don't know if it's going to matter. I think it just ignores it. Like, it not ignores the step, but I think when it goes to run, it realizes there's no changes. Updating icon workflow to auto commit changes. So now we'll come back here. This guy's still running? Really? Oh, he's building NuGets. I don't know how important it is. I might want to separate out that reusable workflow so that I've got a separation between building artifacts and compiling. Because in a lot of cases, we don't actually care about the NuGets. Though on one hand, it's kind of nice to validate that changes didn't break the building of them. I don't know. We'll leave it in for now. If it annoys me enough that that things start taking too long, I'm gonna bypass it. Okay, I just want to see confirm auto merge. Come on. Build status. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I am now confused. Did you rename your job name? Well, so here's the question. And as a GitHub expert yourself, you can probably tell me that I'm an idiot. So here's the build verification workflow. The job is named build. It reuses a workflow here. This reusable workflow does this, which also has a build. And I'm frankly not sure which one it, like, I'm a little confused. And I'm also, okay, let's go back here. Let's go back here. What? See, and unfortunately, status checks. Statuses can include a context, blah, blah, blah. You can see which job it's pointing to. Well, I'm kind of wondering if I can just query these things. Commits ref status. Kind of thinking this might be the easiest way to get it. Because I don't know what is the correct. Like, I kind of want this as my check. I don't grumble. Because you can't, if you don't set up a rule, you can't auto merge. And I'm now confused. So we're just going to GitHub CLI this beast, and I think we're just gonna do this. Okay, so come here, ugly, come here. You. It's not what I copied. Try again. Paste. Oh, cancel. Let's go. Need to get a new window. A second. I'm just gonna flatten this thing up. flat. And if you type that into the dropdown, are there two build names that show up? Just curious. So if I go here and I type the word build, I have that. And it was previously set to build artifacts, and that wasn't correct. And maybe I need this. But maybe I also need, I mean, maybe that's the solution. Build artifacts, build and tests, maybe? Like that's, this is where I'm confused. It is not clear to me what goes in that box. Because perhaps it is build artifacts and then build and test. Like that is possibly the right answer. Maybe, you know what? Maybe it's easiest to test that. We axe that, save changes. Oh, I already sudo auth, so I'm apparently hip now. Wait, did that just auto merge? Dang nabbit. Okay, well, we're gonna test it here then. Let's make sure this change looks like as I expect. So I was gonna test it first, so maybe we test it and then we'll pull request it. Okay, so that guy's going. Okay, icon update. So I want to run this workflow from my icon update improvements. Run workflow. And I'm not entirely sure. I'm trying to remember what it does if there are no changes. Okay, something in the back of my mind is telling me that you have to handle the no changes case. But I could be making that up. And where is my... Did I close it? No, there it is. Nikolai, welcome. I did see your comment. Oh, shoot. Hang on. Hang on 1 second. Oh, my word. The problem when you're scheduled on this repo for notifications is that all of these build things have now spammed my inbox. Stand by while I adjust. There was the comment that you had tagged me on regarding the data grid and the columns. This one. Yeah, this guy. I was going to reply back to it because there is... Yeah. So, and I need to go double check. There is this column was created, and we might be able to even kill it off now. It was created specifically because of the way the combo box behaves and trying to deal with that. Like that is its entire purpose. However, as was pointed out here, that is problematic for the styling. Yeah, and it's the auto one. I always forget about the auto-generated columns because it's the first property on every data grid that I turn off. Because the thing defaults to true, which is just ridiculous in my opinion, because it's rarely correct. Because of things like is selected. It's one of those reflection-y based approaches are awesome when you're trying to get started and usually become a long-term maintenance nightmare. I just finished undoing a reflection-based approach that I did on a work project. I think I made the mistake like 6 years ago, and it's finally getting... I've burned it to the ground today, which was wonderful. Made me feel good. Deleted a bunch of code. But it would be nice to try to deal with this specific case. I don't know. I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how easy it is, and the auto-generated, like, it is definitely an area that has come up multiple times where newer users to the library have run into this problem where um, they want it as a drop-in replacement, and there are a handful of things, and this is one of them, where it's not a drop-in replacement. Um, yeah, we do have two columns that actually do have styles for auto-generate columns. Yes, yeah, I think it would be good to try and address um, yeah, and I think this is the other one you're referencing. Yeah, it is probably worth considering handling those as well. And I'm definitely not opposed to doing it. I think these came about, if I remember correctly, to try to handle that auto-generated case, but they are a bit like whack-a-mole. Um, but I think handling the combo box case is probably worthwhile doing, just because it'll be a little bit nicer for all involved. Oh, look at that. Icon update failed. What did I do wrong here? Commit changes. See, this is where... Ah. Yeah, see, this is where I think we're gonna run amok. So we need to deal with the as changes case. We'll deal with that in a moment. Um, but I also want to see this thing work. So I want to see it work at least once. Let's see, themes, WPF. So since I can't make their web service send me a different pack icon, what I can do is I can edit my own pack icon and say, whoop, there. Let's see. Icon change just for testing. Boom. And there, that will force there to be a diff. What are you doing? Okay, fine. You can run. Um, I did want to touch base with you, Nikolai, as well. Um, to see, because I was contemplating setting up another group on the project, one that actually has contributor level access. And given all of the work you've been doing on it, it seemed appropriate to offer if you were interested in having more direct access to submit commits and whatnot. Ooh. Uh, yeah, I did merge it, and you didn't. If you didn't catch it yet, earlier in the stream, we demoed my new release pipeline. And aside from GitHub throwing a 500 error and mildly messing up my beautiful demo, 4.7 is released. And I think the next one I'm probably going to shoot for is, so I only rev the version numbers up 1 point release, but I think I'm going to shoot for 5.0 being the next release and just start dumping in a bunch of the breaking changes. I'm trying to decide how aggressive I want to do that, whether just start merging them, and if I have to pull them out later, so be it. That might be the approach to go. Very seldom have I run into the case where it's like, oh, we found a bug, we need to release it. But I only rev the version slightly, and I'll probably let it sit for just a little bit to make sure that before I rev it up to the 5.0 preview NuGet packages, just to make sure somebody doesn't report some insane bug. But it is live. I will, once my stream ends here in a moment, I'll actually go and do like tweets and posts and all the other extra stuff. Let's see, where's my actions? I just realized I've got 2 of these running. Huh. It's gonna be interesting. Yeah, I was thinking about that, and it may be. Well, one of these is gonna be the icon update. One of these is gonna be the pull request update. Nope, these are both the icon update. Did I actually queue 2 of them? Apparently I did. Yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking about, is maybe starting a 5.0 branch and just start getting the stuff in, and then at some point doing that. And actually, that's probably not a bad idea. Let's just do that. What is all this? Well, this was me playing with stuff. Stash. So here we'll do this. v5.0. Yeah, we'll do that for now. Push. So if anybody is interested, we will start using that. Oh, shoot. Wrong upstream. Okay, set upstream. That one, submit. Push. Okay. And what did I do wrong here? What did I do wrong here? Cannot find action.yaml or what? Huh? I ran a checkout. Huh? Uh, huh? I'm confused. What did I do wrong? I am confused. I am confused. Oh. Oh. That's probably wrong. That is probably wrong. No. That's exactly what the PR verification does. Well, you've been doing quite a bit of work, so if you see a group promotion come through, that's why. Because I do appreciate it quite a bit. Oh, that's dead. And that's dead. So we don't need those anymore. We'll just drop those as well. That works. Build artifacts actually specify the does. Okay. Why would you not find that when running a checkout? Let's check the other one to make sure. Initializing the eyes, checking out the ref, blah, blah, blah. Switch to new branch. I mean, that's the branch. We're not doing anything different than what we did inside of the other one. And where did the other one die at? What did you do? Cannot find action YAML or Docker file under did you forget? Oh, that means I botched this. What did I do wrong here? Oh, it's because I nested it. Oh. I'm using it in a slightly different way. That's why, because build artifacts wants to create a job, and I really just want it to create. Oh, what is the process for this? Blah, 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 blah. Let's go. Let's see. GitHub Actions context. Or actually what we want is usable workflows. This guy. Yeah, thank you. And using runners, self-holders, and limitators. Only 4 levels deep, 20 reusable workflows, yada yada yada. We're nowhere close to either. Environment variables don't float. Got it. Bum. Let's see, jobs, calling a reusable workflow. Trying to see if there's a way to do a reusable workflow at the steps rather than at the top level job. Guess it's not horrible to do it at both places. It's just really obnoxious. Passing secrets, access permission, using outputs. Guess the only way to get away with that would be a composite action, isn't it? That's not really what I want. That is not really what I want. Let's see. Boom. And the problem being is I don't really want them as separate jobs because those are separate agents and I have to copy data around between them. Let's look at this guy is the other common way of dealing with this. Boom. We could have it just copy, but that is a lot of up and down for no real gain. And that's why it's looking for the composite action syntax, is because I put it down inside of here. The question is, do I care that much? And I do wonder if it would be easier to let's take a look. I wonder if it might be just as easy to make a branch, push it, and trigger the PR with the CLI. Let's just look. I think it's not that difficult. Let's see. PR create. Title, reviewer, base, head. Seems pretty easy. No branch label, milestone, no maintainer edit, project name. Is there a auto commit flag? An auto merge? Let's see. I was hoping to set the I mean, that'll get the PR open, I guess, if I wanted to just go with feature parity of what was there. I really really just want it to auto merge when checks are complete. Um, there we go. BR merge auto. Excellent. Excellent, 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 excellent. Okay, so let's do that, I think. I think that's reasonable. Maybe I should look at briefly what was here before, because I think there was a... Oh, this doesn't have it. I used to have one that was doing the checking for changes. Because it was using the git status command to do it. So let's just do this. That one. Untracked, ignore. Well, I might play with this more because I'm also realizing it's 11:30 and I'm fading fast, so I might have to play with this a little bit because I do want to get this thing automatically going. I feel like I've spent a ton of time trying to make the automation on this project better because so much has gone so slow. So I do apologize, Nikolai, for being somewhat absent on the issues and discussions. I've been trying to make it so that releases go out quicker. Because if we can't submit changes, it's kind of meaningless. So I want releases to be able to go. Like I've said for a while that I want releases to go out much more often. And I realized that part of what was slowing it down was the release process was too painful. And now hopefully it's as simple as I type in milestone and click button. So if you catch the recording of this, you can see the demo earlier. But I think I may have to call it for tonight, and I'm going to play with let's see, switch, branch, commit, push, and then we won't need the build. And then it'll be something like open PR. This will go up here. This will go here. Open PR. Something to that effect. So I'm gonna more work. Still with do that. Cool. Glad you've been seeing it. I was trying to not ignore stuff, but I do want to get this thing rolling nicely so that everything just pushes out and has a much better process. The next thing that's probably going to end up on my backlog is I want to get some automation around all of the brushes and changes. I do have this weird idea in my head that I might want to build some sort of source generator for XAML because I don't think Microsoft's ever going to build it for me. And with the way the WPF XAML process occurs, the XAML compile occurs before the regular CSC exe gets run. And so there's no way to use C# source generators to generate XAML because you're already too late for the XAML compile. So it has to be something that occurs earlier in the pipeline. So there was the stream I did 3 months ago, where I was the last time I was working on the theming brush stuff, and I think that's what's triggered me in going, it might be nice to have a source generator for XAML, specifically for some of those cases where, and I think you commented, we end up duplicating a lot of XAML between templates. So I kind of want a source generator-ish behavior for those so that you can write it once and then like plop XAML in different things. So I'm thinking I've got thoughts. It may make for an interesting stream at some point of trying to build something like that out. But I think for that, I'm going to tell everyone thank you for dropping in. Check out the 4.7 release. Let me know if there's bugs. Nikolai, once again, thank you for all of your help on it. So you can gen code at that point in the pipeline. Waiting for WPF bug puzzles. There will be more puzzles, and I will intentionally put some WPF ones in. Hey, here, I'll show you. Okay, hang on. I will show you. So, is there a hook? No. However, where was the... Where's my blind or stupid? WinUI v5. The one over here. This guy. This guy here has... let's see, because this is using the resource gen. Let's see. Show me the composite of all of you. Where is it? It is looking for the CS proj change. The CS proj change. That's unchanged. Where did I put it? Oh right, this one didn't. This one I just ran manually outside of it. Okay, so there may not be much to show. There's not necessarily a hook in the build process, but you can arbitrarily hook MS build at it between any of its tasks. So you can write a before build target or an after build target, and those things that you put in your CS proj for those hooks, those are just some well-known arbitrary ones. You can write a hook that lets you drop in before the XAML compile. You are then responsible for doing all of the parsing and feeding it all of the input stuff. But I already know how to do that. So, and that's kind of how XAML test works as well, is it runs earlier in the process, hooks in, grabs all your XAML files and goes, I got you, and then rips through them and parses them as regular XML and gens out all of the stuff for the Show Me the XAML project. So I'm kind of thinking something similar, but I'm almost wondering if maybe it needs to, just pull everything that's like, star.template.xaml or something, or .xaml.template, or no, I'd probably want it to end in .xaml, because then the editor would pick it up with the right language mode. That's probably better. Something to that effect, where it's able to pick it up and then have some sort of replacement. The question is you get really close, and at a certain point I start questioning if what I really want is Razor inside of my WPF, because we could pull in Razor and literally gen the XAML files using Razor. So we could use C# in an XML file to generate a XAML file that the XAML compiler generates to BAML. That sounds both amazing and absolutely terrifying, but it would give us the entire power of Razor. And Razor is a pretty strong templating engine. Because I didn't really want to write my own templating engine. I don't think I want to write my own templating engine. Because the moment I allow myself to plunk content into an area, I just know the very next thing I'm going to go is, now I want if statements. Now I want for loops. Now I want, and it's going to be like, dang nabbit, I should really just go through and do a real templating engine. Oh, thanks for the follow. I appreciate it. Manchery X. I apologize if I'm butchering the name. I also apologize because I think I'm wrapping up the stream for tonight. But feel free to drop back in. Stream this time every week. For me, it's Wednesdays night starting at 9 p.m. But I realize I'm targeting an English-speaking developer community, and 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is like when the vast majority of the world is asleep.
So it's sucky for most of the world, but 8:40 a.m. here. Yeah, that's the thing is I start so late and go so long that it's like the sunrise makes it all the way around the globe. That's always great. So for what it's worth. Okay, this time I'm serious. I'm going to sign off for the night. Happy coding, everyone. I'll post some updates about the 4.7.0 release. And we'll see everyone next time. Have a good night.